Okay, welcome back, class. So we've already gone over these different diverse dietary needs: herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. I'm sure you've been talking about this since like second grade anyway. These terms represent the usual diets of the animals, but most animals are going to be opportunistic feeders. So a carnivore that eats other animals, if the only food available is a vegetable matter, that carnivore will usually be willing to broaden its diet to survive. Malnutrition is the failure to obtain adequate nutrition, and malnutrition can have negative impacts on health and survival of animals. So, deficiencies in essential nutrients can cause deformities, disease, and death. We just went through some different required vitamins and minerals in our diet, and that table included different effects of not having enough of those nutrients. Cattle, deer, and other herbivores can prevent phosphorus deficiencies by consuming concentrated sources of salt or other minerals. And children sometimes will be seen to develop a protein deficiency when their diet shifts from mainly drinking breast milk to eating foods that have little protein. So if they're eating a lot of rice cereal and not as much protein, sometimes they might develop a protein deficiency. Undernourishment is when a diet does not provide enough energy. Okay, so undernourishment and deficiency, malnutrition, are two different things. Malnutrition is not getting enough nutrients. Undernourishment is not getting enough energy. An undernourished individual will first start to use up their stored fat and carbohydrates. So those energy sources within their body that have been stored will be used up. Then once those stored fat and carbohydrates are used up, they'll start to break down their own proteins. As they're breaking down their own proteins, they're going to start losing some of their muscle mass because a lot of those proteins are being used. They will start suffering protein deficiency in the brain, and then they can die or suffer irreversible damage. There's a lot of insights into human nutrition that have come from epidemiology. Epidemiology is studying human diseases, human health, how diseases are occurring across a population. One example was finding that neural tube defects are found to be the result of a deficiency in folic acid in pregnant mothers. So because we were seeing that those neural tubes weren't closing properly, the United States in 1998 started requiring that folic acid be added to enriched grain products. Any woman who is pregnant or could be pregnant or could get pregnant soon should be taking adequate amounts of folic acid, because often that neural tube is developed before the woman even knows she's pregnant. So if you wait until after you know you're pregnant, you're probably too late. So you need to be making sure you're getting adequate levels of folic acid if you are potentially pregnant at a soon stage of your life. Okay, if a zoo animal is eating ample food but shows signs of malnutrition, how could a researcher determine which nutrient is lacking in its diet? How could we figure out what is missing from this animal's diet when they're showing signs of malnutrition? Okay, calories is measuring the energy of your food. Cellular respiration produces ATP by oxidizing those organic molecules, those sugars and other foods digested from your food, and using those carbohydrates as fats or fuel. A gram of fat has more than twice as many calories as a gram of carbohydrates or proteins. So usually a gram of carbohydrates or proteins has about 4 calories, whereas a gram of fat has about 9. We can measure how much energy is stored in food, and we measure them in kilocalories. A kilocalorie is the same as 1,000 calories. Although when you're reading like the dietary calories on a food label, these are actually referring to kilocalories, and they're written with a capital C as calories. Metabolic rate is a measurement of how much energy that animal is consuming. You can find that by adding up all their energy requiring biochemical reactions over a period of time. And so the BMR, or their basal metabolic rate, is how much energy a resting animal is going to need each day. So your metabolic rate is your BMR plus all the energy needed for any physical activity. That is how much energy you need to obtain from your diet. If your diet provides excess energy, that is going to be stored in your body as glycogen or fat. Different ways that animals can feed. There are suspension feeders. Suspension feeders are animals that live in the water and they eat small organisms or food particles that are suspended in that water. For example, clams and oysters. As the water passes over their gills, they're going to feed on those tiny morsels of food in the water. Filter feeders are going to move through the water and filter the water through a filtering structure to get their food. So something like a humpback whale that is actively moving through the water, and they have a baleen to strain fish. Substrate feeders live in or on their food source. This would be something like a mouth larva or caterpillar that lives on a leaf and eats the leaf. The fly larvae, those little worms that show up on decaying meat, those fly larvae are going, they're not worms, they're larvae. They're going to show up on animal carcasses that are decaying, and they live on that carcass as they consume it. Fluid feeders are going to be animals that suck a nutrient-rich fluid from a living host. This could be an animal as a living host, like mosquitoes that consume blood from humans. The living host could be a plant, so aphids drink phloem sap from plants. And then there are bulk feeders. Bulk feeders eat large pieces of food. They might have things like tentacles, pincers, claws, fangs, jaws, and teeth that help kill prey and break it down for digestion. So between these 5, suspension feeders, filter feeders, substrate feeders, fluid feeders, and bulk feeders, where would you say a person fits in? Which one are we? So which of these are correctly paired? Is a lion a substrate feeder? Is a baleen whale a suspension feeder? Is an aphid a fluid feeder? Is a clam a suspension feeder? Or is a snake a bulk feeder? Okay, so we are going to come back in our next video to start talking about how we actually process our food, talking about our digestive system. I'll see you soon. Bye.